You ever meet someone who thinks just because they've got a little title next to their name, they can boss the whole world around? Yeah, me too. Mine wasn't a cop or a city official. It was a guy named Peterson, the president of the local HOA. He didn't just walk around like he ran his neighborhood. He acted like he owned everything within sight, even if it wasn't his. And that's how we ended up here, with him and his buddy breaking into my locked barn in the middle of the day. No warning, no permission, just full-on trespassing like they had every right. But here's the part that still makes me smile. They thought they'd find something dangerous or out of order in there. What they found instead? 5 massive bulls, each weighing around 3,000 pounds, who weren't too happy about being surprised. That's 15,000 pounds of muscle, snorts, and attitude waiting in the dark. And trust me, when a bull's upset, you feel it in your bones. So yeah, this story's about a couple of HOA wannabe cops who thought they could play sheriff on my land, and ended up learning a lesson they won't forget. I didn't choose this land by accident. I picked it because it was outside the HOA. That was the whole point. I didn't want to deal with rules about what color my mailbox had to be, or get letters telling me to mow the lawn twice a week. I wanted space, quiet, and the right to run things my way without someone poking around. My place sits just past their property line, close enough to see their cookie-cutter houses, but far enough to breathe. The barn's an older structure, nothing fancy, but it's strong and well-kept. That's where I keep my bulls. 5 big ones, bred for size and calm temperaments. I've got good fencing, secure gates, and clear no trespassing signs up along every edge that touches their land. Everything on my property has a purpose. I've got tools, equipment, and a working system that I keep clean and safe, not just for me, but for the animals too. The funny thing is, I actually go out of my way to make sure I'm not bothering anyone. But some people, like Peterson, don't care about that. They just see something they don't control, and that's enough to make them angry. The first time I heard from Peterson, it was through some poor HOA secretary who sounded almost embarrassed to be passing along the message. The complaint? The side of my fence that faced their so-called nature buffer wasn't the right shade of brown. Not broken, not falling over, just not in harmony with the houses across the line. I laughed, then wrote back a polite message explaining that my land wasn't part of their HOA, and they had no say in what color I painted anything. Thought that would be the end of it. It wasn't. Next came a letter, this time directly from Peterson, demanding I cut down a few oak trees because, apparently, their shadows reached part of a picnic area during the late afternoon. Same answer from me. No. My trees. My land. Plant some flowers that like shade if it bothers you so much. Peterson didn't take that well. The guy started showing up on the edge of my property, standing there with a clipboard like he was doing some kind of official inspection. He'd squint at my barn like it personally offended him. The way he acted, you'd think he ran a government agency instead of a group of people obsessed with matching shutters. He didn't just dislike my place. He couldn't stand that he couldn't control it. That's when I realized this wasn't just a neighbor being picky. This was a man who saw my independence as a problem he needed to fix. After the letters didn't work, Peterson decided to get creative. He made up something called the Community Adjacency Standards Committee, which, as far as I could tell, was just him and his sidekick, Bernard. That name made it sound official, but it was just 2 bored guys with clipboards trying to act like they were on some kind of mission. Suddenly, they were showing up near my fence almost daily, sometimes with binoculars, sometimes pointing at my barn like it was a crime scene. One time I caught Bernard crouched behind a bush, snapping photos like he was with the FBI. It went from annoying to flat-out creepy. I put up fresh no trespassing signs, made sure every one of them was straight and easy to read. I also started filming. Every time I saw them lingering around, I took out my phone and recorded. No yelling, No threats, just quiet, clear proof that they were stepping way out of line. The worst part was how smug they looked, like they thought they were heroes protecting their little patch of suburbia from a rogue barn. They weren't protecting anything. They were harassing a neighbor who just wanted to be left alone. I kept wondering how long they were going to play this game. Turns out they were just getting started. It was a regular Tuesday. I left around noon to grab some fencing supplies and a quick lunch. I wasn't gone long, maybe a couple hours, but when I pulled back up the gravel drive, something didn't feel right. My barn always looked the same from a distance, but that day, something was off. The big steel padlock I use on the sliding door wasn't hanging where it should have been. Instead, it was lying in the dirt, twisted and bent like someone had tried to pry it off with a crowbar. As I got closer, I saw the fresh gouges in the wood around the doorframe. Deep, splintered marks where someone had forced their way in. My stomach dropped. My first thought was the bulls. I slid the door open, and the smell hit me immediately. It wasn't just the usual scent of animals. It was stronger, like panic. Inside, the bulls were pacing. Normally they're calm, barely moving unless food's involved. But now they were stomping, tossing their heads, snorting. One had kicked the stall wall so hard a board was cracked. Another had knocked over a full water bucket. Nothing was missing. My tools were still there. Chainsaw, feed, even some older gear nobody would bother stealing. All untouched. This wasn't a robbery. It was something else. Someone came in here to mess with me, or to snoop. And only 2 people had shown that much interest in my barn lately. Peterson and Bernard. That's when it hit me. This wasn't random. This was personal. And whoever did it scared the hell out of 5 bulls just to feel in control. I didn't wait. I called the sheriff as soon as I could think straight. While I waited for the deputy to show up, I took photos of everything. The busted lock, the fresh marks on the door, the torn-up stall, even the tire tracks near the edge of the property. When the deputy arrived, he looked around, asked a few questions, and took his own pictures. I told him about the history with the HOA guys, how they'd been pushing to get inside the barn, and how I'd always said no. He didn't say it outright, but you could tell he knew exactly the kind of people I was dealing with. "Best thing you can do now is get cameras up," he told me. "They don't like being watched back." Later that day, a neighbor from inside the HOA, someone I'd stayed friendly with, called me. Her voice was low, like she was telling me a secret. "You won't believe this," she said. Apparently, Peterson and Bernard had come stumbling back into their neighborhood earlier that afternoon, looking like they'd rolled through a hedge. Bernard had a limp and a rip in his pants, and Peterson had a scratch down his face. They told people they were checking on a potential hazard near the property line when my bulls got aggressive and charged, which was a complete lie. My bulls had been locked in their stalls the whole time. It was obvious. They'd gone in, scared the animals, and barely made it out without getting hurt worse. The next evening, I saw my chance. Peterson had a habit of walking around the HOA's common area after dinner, acting like he was on patrol. I parked legally on the street, walked over to the sidewalk near the trail, and waited. Sure enough, there they came, Peterson looking stiff as ever, and Bernard limping behind him like his pride hurt more than his ankle. I kept my phone in my hand, recording audio out in the open. I didn't raise my voice, just walked up and said, "Peterson." "Bernard. Got a visit from the sheriff yesterday. Someone broke into my barn." Bernard looked like he wanted to disappear. Peterson, as usual, tried to play it cool. "Maybe your animals got out," he said, shrugging like it wasn't a big deal. So I pressed a little harder. "Strange, because you 2 were seen coming back through the neighborhood, all banged up, and my bulls, still locked up, didn't escape, didn't go near your side." That's when Peterson snapped. "Those animals attacked us," he said, red in the face. He realized too late what he'd just admitted, that he'd been inside the barn when they reacted. He clammed up quick after that, mumbled something about lawyers, and dragged Bernard off like the show was over. But I already had what I needed. I wasn't just going to let this slide. I took everything: photos, video, sheriff's report, even the audio of Peterson's slip-up, and handed it over to a lawyer who knew property law inside and out. She didn't need long to see how bad Peterson and Bernard had messed up. Breaking into a locked building without permission wasn't just dumb, it was criminal, and since they likely acted on their own, the HOA's insurance probably wouldn't cover them. We sent a demand letter straight to Peterson and CC'd the entire HOA board. It laid everything out: how they trespassed, broke the lock, caused damage, and disturbed the animals. We asked for full payment for the barn door repair, the destroyed padlock, the new security camera system I'd already ordered, and all legal fees. But we didn't stop there. The letter also demanded a written apology and a guarantee that no HOA board member would ever step foot on my land again without permission. While that was going out, I made sure the rest of the neighborhood knew exactly what kind of trouble their board members had stirred up. I wrote a short, calm summary of the situation. Just facts, and paid a local teen to quietly put a copy in every mailbox in Serenity Meadows. I didn't name names, but anyone who'd seen Bernard limping around or heard the gossip could put 2 and 2 together. It wasn't about revenge. It was about making sure this never happened again. It didn't take long for things to fall apart on their side. As soon as the demand letter hit, the HOA board freaked out. Their lawyer reviewed everything and probably gave them the kind of talk that keeps people up at night. Turns out their insurance wouldn't cover anything tied to criminal acts, which meant if this went to court, Peterson and Bernard could be on the hook personally. That scared the board more than anything. They weren't about to risk higher dues or lawsuits because 2 guys decided to play detective. Peterson tried to save face, blaming everyone but himself, but the board wasn't buying it. They forced both him and Bernard to resign immediately. No more committees, no more power trips, just 2 guys who went too far and got caught. Then the sheriff's office came through. With all the evidence I'd provided and that accidental confession from Peterson, they filed formal charges: criminal trespass and property damage. It wasn't a felony or anything big, but it was enough to make the whole neighborhood see exactly what kind of people they were dealing with. And just like that, the self-declared kings of Serenity Meadows lost their thrones. For good. After it was all over, I had the barn door repaired stronger than before, upgraded the lock, and installed cameras that covered every inch of the property line, not because I was scared, but because I was done giving second chances. I didn't pick that land to fight anyone. I picked it to be left alone and live on my terms. The lesson? Stand your ground, know your rights, and never let people who crave control chip away at your freedom, one complaint at a time. Sometimes all it takes to shut them down is calm thinking, and a few angry bulls sure don't hurt either.